Hi and welcome to ThePrint. I'm Karanjeet Kaur. I'm a journalist and an editor. Let's talk today about the 90-hour work week and the hypocrisy of those protesting it. Because we are back at the time of the year when a man who earns 51 crore rupees tells the rest of us that we need to work harder. This happens at least once a quarter these days. India's business leaders will poke their heads out of their luxurious offices and scold us into believing that a 40-hour work week represents the very pinnacle of laziness. This time, it was the turn of the chairman of L&T, S. N. Subrahmanyan. He told his colleagues, who earn 535 times less than him, that they need to work 90-hour work weeks. On an internal call that was later made public, Subrahmanyan also wondered aloud what people do with their time at home. How long can you stare at your wife or husband? He asked, because apparently, the entire purpose of human existence is to generate quarterly profits for shareholders. Now, this breathtaking combination of patriarchal condescension and capitalist exploitation would make the zamindars of feudal India blush. Naturally, corporate India's workforce, which is already stretched thin between endless Teams meetings and "do you have time to jump on a quick call" messages, responded with the derision these comments deserved. The internet turned Subrahmanyan's words into memes faster than you can say toxic work culture. India's most respected business leaders and startup founders have made a habit of displaying just how deeply disconnected they are from the realities of working people's lives. Subrahmanyan is hardly the only culprit. Just months ago, Infosys co-founder Narayan Murthy prescribed a 70-hour work week as the cure for India's productivity challenges. While the rest of India ridiculed that view, Murthy drew support from Bhavish Agarwal, the founder of Ola, who labeled work-life balance a Western concept. Here's what I find most fascinating about these periodic sermons from India's business elite. Not once do they mention overtime pay for these extra hours. Not once do they discuss additional benefits or support systems for workers who are expected to sacrifice their personal lives at the altar of corporate growth. Instead, they wrap their demands in the flag of patriotism. They speak of India's decade and nation building, as if working people into the ground is somehow serving the country. Now, the outrage that we are witnessing from India's professional class is entirely justified. A 90-hour work week is a blueprint for collective burnout packaged as ambition. Overnight, dozens of people are speaking the language of Marxism. Still, this moment of solidarity and empathy goes only as far as a corporate boardroom. It does not extend to our homes and the workers who toil to run it for us. The real conversation about labor rights in India crashes into a wall of hypocrisy the moment it enters our homes. Corporate employees who would file harassment complaints if their managers spoke to them in a stern tone see nothing wrong in verbally abusing their cooks and cleaners. The same people who demand mental health days and workplace dignity conspire in building WhatsApp groups to ensure that their domestic workers remain underpaid. Urban professionals who bristle over the idea of workplace surveillance and the ruthlessness of swiping in and timesheets think nothing of installing cameras to monitor their domestic workers. The architects of progressive HR policies in their glass tower offices return home to enforce feudal hierarchies that would make their own corporate overlords proud. This selective application of labor rights reveals something far more insidious than mere hypocrisy. It exposes how India's professional class has mastered the language of workers' rights while perpetuating the very exploitation they claim to resist. Once we clock out, we transition easily from being the exploited to the exploiters, carrying forward centuries-old traditions of domestic servitude. I've witnessed this hypocrisy play out so many times that it rarely surprises me anymore. Around Diwali, a debate raged on my college WhatsApp group, populated by privileged people who asked, was paying the cooks and cleaners double their monthly salary as Diwali bonus too much? While a spirited set of women argued that this was only fair, an equally spirited bunch argued against it. A few years ago, in the fancy Santa Cruz building that I used to occupy, an affluent family suddenly decided that the cleaners, who kept our home and society spotless, could no longer use the elevator. No reason was given. But I suspect it was because, unlike the service elevators of Delhi and Gurgaon, our building had only one. In upscale Bandra, where I moved a few years ago, a neighbor's first words of welcome included some very unsolicited advice. She told me not to pay our shared domestic worker more than the pittance that she was already receiving. When I questioned her, I was told with practiced ease that an enforcement of class boundaries was essential to preserving peace. In apartment complexes across cities, domestic workers navigate several unwritten rules and casual humiliations. They're expected to use separate utensils and barred from common spaces. Watch any apartment complex around lunchtime. You'll see domestic workers huddled in corners or sitting on stairs to eat their meals, out of the view of the sirs and the madams. Meanwhile, the lawns and benches that they maintain remain out of bounds to them. The scale of this exploitation is staggering, even if we can't pin down its exact dimensions. Government data places the number of domestic workers in India at 4.75 million. But other more realistic estimates suggest anywhere between 20 to 80 million workers. In Bangalore and Chennai, a domestic worker needs to work in 6 different households just to be able to earn the legal minimum wage. Think about that for a moment. 6 different homes, 6 different sets of rules, and 6 different ways of being reminded of their place in the social hierarchy. Our legal framework is equally vexing. While urban professionals can quote chapter and verse of workplace harassment policies, domestic workers remain excluded from critical national labor laws. India voted in favor of the International Labour Organization's Convention 189 for protecting domestic workers' rights in 2011. But 14 years later, we haven't bothered to ratify it. This legislative vacuum isn't a bug, it's a feature. In the micro fiefdoms that we run, employment terms are set by whim. Written contracts, or fixed working hours, or clear job descriptions, or even rest and recovery. These basic rights suddenly become radical suggestions when applied to our own homes. Nowhere was this feudal mindset laid out in as brutal clarity as the pandemic. When wages were cut or jobs were lost because employers feared that their domestic workers would be carriers of the virus, there were no severance packages and no notice periods. So as we, rightfully, mock Subrahmanyans' comments, maybe we should also turn the gaze inwards. His suggestion of a 90-hour work week has provoked our outrage because it threatens our privileges, not because we fundamentally oppose the exploitation of labor. Many of us already treat our domestic workers like permanently on-call service providers, who should be grateful for whatever scraps of dignity we choose to throw their way. And that's not so different from the people we love to hate on. After all, what's the tangible difference between a CEO demanding a 90-hour work week and an urban professional expecting their domestic worker to be available at all hours? None at all. In our clean, beautiful homes, we are all minor Subrahmanyans.